Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey since day one. So huge thank you to Folgers. Another big thank you goes out to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found anywhere that good music can be found. So thank you, thank you. Two great sponsors. We can't ask for better. Tonight, the Outer Realm is honored to welcome back the return of Brad Olsen. This time we're going to be discussing his second book, Future Esoteric. And I know you guys were just all over me the last time, so here we are. And there it is. Get your questions ready. It's awesome. I've dabbled a lot in it. So everybody settle in. I see the chat room's filling up. Hello, Amelia, who's not with us in person, but she is in the chat. So she's slowly getting herself better. It's been a long haul. Hey, Tamara. Hey, Chris. So here we go. And guest of honor. Bam. There he is. How are you? Oh, can you hear me okay? I can't hear you at all.
Hey, Michelle. It's good to be back on the Outer Realm. And
hi, how are you?
Shoot. Let me see what's up with that.
Yeah, you're freezing up a lot. That's okay. Hopefully, maybe it's just all this power zone you're in.
Could I be so quick and just come right back on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just jump right back.
Okay.
Sorry. Technology, your best friend and your worst enemy.
It
right
is.
Back. I'm just sometimes it does this if I have my computer on.
Okay. All right. I'll give that another try. He's at a conference, UFO conference. So maybe he's got some weird, crazy vibes over there. I'm not sure. Anyway, everybody load up. Yes, Bubbles is here. And everybody's chiming in for Bubbles. Here we go. Hello, Bubbles. And we've got Hope You're Feeling Better, Amelia. So everybody, this is going to be good. And again, Amelia, can't see anything in Twitter, so only the usual feed here. Hey, Ken, nice to join us. So yeah, we're on UFO Paranormal, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials on YouTube. We're on the Outer Realm Facebook. We're on Canada's Most Haunted Facebook. Joe Montaldo, UFO Undercover, News on the Flip Side, UFO Paranormal, and United Public Radio on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter, my personal Twitter, actually. But again, we can't see the comments. So if you're looking to just get some comments in, those are the feeds that really work out the best for us. So Future Esoteric. I have to say, this may be a little bit sensitive for some people. I'm kind of living in that age right now, sensitivity, but it's fantastic. Personally, the first one was amazing. I got all kinds of messages about bringing Brad on, and Brad has 3 books, and the next time he comes on, he's going to be handling book 3, which of course I have put away at the moment. But this is the Future Esoteric, the Unseen Realms, and he covers everything from, honestly, from Roswell and back. Okay, we'll try it again.
Okay.
Oh, that's better.
Great. Well, hey,
showing off your book.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked it up. That's a great one.
I've got the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, book two. Well, this is, I guess, what we're going to be discussing. But first off, what are you up to? You're this weekend. You're up at a conference.
Yeah, I'm in Sedona, Arizona right now
Wow.
for a 4-day. Today was the first day
Right.
conference called Contact 2022, and I'm presenting tomorrow on Antarctica, where I
Ooh.
was visiting a little over 3 years ago. So, giving
Ooh.
everybody an idea of what it's like to travel down there, sort of the
Yeah.
science that's taking place at some of the research stations, and then what everybody loves to hear, what might be under the ice and all the secrets that could be hidden
Yeah.
there. So,
Well, we don't want you to divulge it in front of 3 million people. So we'll wait till
yeah.
after you've had your conference and maybe the next show. But
Or
yeah,
if you're in
it is.
the Arizona area, come on out. There are still tickets available, and I'm on at noon tomorrow. And then again on Sunday, I'm doing the Hidden Esoteric in Plain Sight. And that's a lot of the stuff that's featured in my book, including Future Esoteric, which we'll be talking about tonight.
Yes, yes. Tonight is the book two segment.
Woohoo!
And I know I've been dabbling in all three of them, really. It's just one of these things that, like I was saying, it says, well, we're living in a bit of a sensitive culture right now. So, but I don't know. I have to agree with you. You made a comment in here at the very beginning saying, if what's in this book is actually true, wow. It's like, I think it might be in a little bit of a little bit of trouble, a little bit of a dilemma indeed. So where do you want to start? I mean, I don't even know. I have a million questions, but it's a matter of, I want to make sure we cover as much as possible within like 2 hours. So
Sure.
I
Well,
leave it to
let
you,
me
sir.
give your listeners a little background on the whole series and then
Yes.
this book.
Perfect.
So, Modern Esoteric is book one in the series, and that's called Beyond Our Senses. And each book has 3 sections in it. Modern
Right.
Esoteric are all the traditions leading up to this modern age, from the secret societies, more of current era, but the mystery schools of old, and so much more that's just really been kept away from human consciousness. You had to be a part of the group to get a lot of this information. And that's really the nature of the word esoteric, is that it's information that's available to a select few. In
Right.
fact, when everybody knows about these subjects, the word changes to exoteric. So this is just a subject that's always fascinated me from the time I was a little kid, to learn about all that's been hidden from us. Because also at a time when I was very young, I kept thinking, why don't we live in a utopia planet? And in fact, there's a section in Future Esoteric called Utopia, where I
Yes.
address in the half dozen chapters different ways that we could view our world in a utopia state. So then Future Esoteric is also the secret states and cosmos, all things UFO and alien and ET. And that's the bit
Right.
about, if even a fraction of this material comes to pass as being our reality, boy, are we in for show.
I think so. We should be in a Star Trek reality right now.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Pretty
And I
much.
often talk about that, Michelle. I'll bring it up at my
Yes.
conferences, saying that we've been ripped off 300 years of technology at this point. And
Right.
we should actually be at that point in Star Trek where we're going around and exploring the galaxies
Yeah.
as a peaceful, benevolent race who's just collecting information for science, as they did in the Star Trek series, which, by the way, is humans 300 years from now. That's when the original Star Trek series takes place.
I really hope it doesn't take us 300 years to evolve to that point, which I guess, when you talk about that, before we get started, we've had the congressional hearing on UFOs this past week, and it still feels like, okay, they're opening the door a little bit, but it just feels like it's in small spurts, like it still doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere soon, right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that briefly before we get to the book? Do you think it's just another give them something, but really it's nothing?
Well, any kind of disclosure is fine, even if it is very still classified and they're only just giving us a little glimpse. At least they're talking about it, right? So that's the important thing.
Right.
So it used to be called the drip, drip, drip of disclosure. Now it's kind of like a steady stream. It's almost every day we're hearing something from one source or another. Now a congressional hearing bringing it up and talking about it. So that's a good thing.
Right.
What we're waiting for, though, is for the full dam to break.
Yeah,
and
that would be nice.
to have meaningful contact with extraterrestrials and just bring it out to the open so everybody knows. It should no longer be a secret.
Do you think
one of the chapters in the Utopia section in Future Esoteric is called The Age of Transparency, when everything is just known by everybody. In fact, part of the onus of the age of transparency is on us, that we will need to be open to these concepts. It's kind of like the whole idea of when Columbus first arrived in what is today Hispaniola or Dominican Republic, was his first landing to the New World in 1492. And it was said that the native people could not even see his ship. And so this is very analogous to UFOs in our skies. What if they're there and we just can't even see them? Or perhaps they're not letting us see them. So it was not until the shaman of the Tiano Indian tribe were able to say, hey, there's something out there. They're coming ashore in their ships. They treated them like visiting gods, and the whole tribe basically fell to their knees in worship of them. And that is exactly what the extraterrestrials do not want us to do.
Right, because it didn't work out so good for South America. Let's put it that way, you know, with that endeavor. So in saying that, do you think we're ready? I
think we are ready. Yeah, I think it is the zeitgeist of the age. It is the period we live in. It's the most amazing time to be alive. What's the old saying from China? That you're blessed to be born, blessed and cursed to be born in interesting times.
Yeah.
And so it could be a blessing and a curse for some people to have this experience, because the religions of the world, most especially the Catholic Church, have done examinations on what disclosure would do to their faith and to their religion. And they basically found out that it would render it as inconclusive, that it's going to be irrelevant to their parishioners once extraterrestrial contact is known and made. Because why do we need religions anymore? They're telling us that we live in this heliocentric world, where they even thought long ago that the sun rotated around the earth, that we're just the center of everything. Well, now, of course, we know that's not true. And now we know that there is.
No, we're not. I had a little puppy who thought she was the center of everything. I thought so too, but you know what? Not so much. So, okay. So let's jump to the book, because I know some of what you're talking about is in here. So why don't we just pick a starting point? Because I mean, there's so much. I wrote down a bunch of topics, and I just want to hear basically as much as you could cram in there, because the last time a bunch of people went and bought the book that I kept flashing around. I know. So I know. So here we go. Flashing it around. So let's
All right, students, gather around.
That's right. Here we go.
Talking class today. Oh, by the way, I'm in Reverend John Polk's apartment here in Sedona, and he does nightly UFO tours right from his front porch here. And he might have some people coming over tonight after the show with his night vision goggles. And his motto is, here he is, your money back if you don't see a UFO. And how many times have you refunded? Never. They see them every single night here. It's just amazing.
I'm not wrong. Well, I shouldn't say that. We see a lot here too, but I mean, obviously not as much as he does, if you can guarantee it.
Where are you? Where are you at?
I'm actually in Niagara.
Oh.
We stream out in New Orleans, but I'm in Niagara, and UFOs are very abundant here.
You're close to the Bridgewater Triangle up there also.
Sure.
I don't know if you know about that. Anyway.
Carry on. You have the only statue of Nikola Tesla in the U.S. is in Niagara.
It's in Canada, actually.
In the Canada side, even. So we don't even have one here in America.
No, there's even
greatest inventor of all time.
There's a boulevard named after him too, Nikola Tesla Boulevard.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we really dig him.
Well, of course, I feature him very prominently in all three esoteric guides because his breakthroughs in technology are still, to this day, being fully backward engineered and understood, because he was just a man so ahead of his time and deserves all the credit we can give him.
I mean, look at the FBI files. If you go into the vault on their website, and it says that he was Venusian, and he was brought here by two extraterrestrials from Venus. I hate to say, so much ET, but two beings from Venus, and brought him into the Tesla family. And according to the FBI and their records, that they would come in and check on him fairly regularly. And their technological Venusians are supposed to be very technologically inclined. So if you start thinking about it, it's like,
Probably feed him information too that he turned into inventions and patents.
Yeah.
It's really interesting you brought up the Venusians, because I'm speaking at a conference in July up at Mount Shasta called the Mount Shasta Summer Conference. And John Polk, in fact, will be up there too as well, doing his UFO tours. And there are several Venusian contactees that speak at this conference. And of course, maybe your listeners have heard of Valiant Thor and several other Venusians who came down here that also helped with Giant Rock, George Van Tassel, and the Integratron that he built there, as well as George Adamski. And the very dawning of the beginning of the disclosure movement were these guys who were getting information and helping us in the very early phases start to acquaint ourselves with all kinds of extraterrestrials and ET technology. But the interesting thing about the Venusians is they look almost exactly like we do. So they could just blend right in.
That's right.
What was Frank Strange's did the book The Stranger at the Pentagon, which was all about how they were here in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And John F. Kennedy met them. I'm sure Dwight D. Eisenhower met them. And probably all the presidents.
Which leads you to wonder why we're having this congressional hearing and this, you know what I mean? You're like, come on, you definitely know more than what you guys are letting on. But I mean, we don't want mass hysteria or anything. So, I'll roll with that for a little while. But when your own FBI has files on it, and they disclose it, besides that, I think that's a real disclosure started. So... But there was one comment when we were talking about disclosure was the Catholic Church is part of the problem. If you do some research, that was spoken about a little bit last night also when Joe Montaldo was on the show, about the fact that, they're well aware of everything going on. And there's been talk of them along with other, religious organizations or churches putting together counseling for people to prepare them, I guess, because of their faith, to prepare them for the possibility of contact, which I thought, you know what, this is really good, because unless it's instilled to you from the time you're a child, most people who see extraterrestrials that don't look pretty much human are going to go, nope. That was my
the Catholic Church definitely knows, and that's a great comment, Sarah. They have a telescope in New Mexico with the acronym name Lucifer. Funny name to give a telescope looking at the heavenly bodies in outer space.
Right.
When one of their cardinals came out and said, well, if we ever made meaningful contact with extraterrestrials, they could be baptized. Like, really?
If they let you baptize them, it might be like putting a cat in water.
To me, that was a telltale sign that they know. Of course, they know.
They definitely know. And I guess if you break down Lucifer, the morning star, the knowledge, and it's just there's so many different words that are used and not really given, like even right down to the serpent, right down to the number 666, right down to now what y'all think, people, just saying. But yes, Jim, that's actually where Brad is right
Arizona. Where about in Arizona? Does he know? I know it's out here in the Southwest.
Jim, Do you know exactly where? I've got it somewhere because we actually did a show which included a lot of information on it. If you just pop it up when you.
Because I'm here in Arizona, I wouldn't mind
going to check it out.
track it down.
I never know.
I
Maybe
like
you
to
can
travel
do tours.
places. I just came over the border yesterday from Mexico,
right.
driving down to Baja, San
Right.
Felipe.
Oh,
Boy,
very
that's
nice.
a trip. That's like a DMZ down there. It's
Yeah.
the border is wow.
I think
Unlike any here, as soon as you cross over the border, boom, you're in a third world country. But here's a picture of it I took yesterday. That's the border. You can see all the fences and towers.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the mighty Colorado River, creating an international boundary between Arizona and Mexico. And it's little more than an irrigation trench. It should be pumping out hundreds of gallons a second. It's one of the biggest rivers in the west part of the United States, and it's just a little more than irrigation trench. Yeah. By the time it gets to the Gulf of California, it's dry. And so they have completely destroyed one of the largest river deltas in a desert in the world. It's just all the life has been lost because the salt water came rushing in and all the plants and animals are gone. Yeah.
While you're talking, I am just telescope located. I'm going to find this for you right now. Okay. Lucifer instruments helped us. Blah 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 blah. Lucifer, Vatican Observatory on Mount Graham in Stafford. Does that sound right? That's right. The Vatican has an observatory in Arizona manned by Jesuit astronomers. And from what I'm seeing, spokesperson for University of Arizona. So apparently, does that sound right? Is there a
Mount Graham? Yeah.
Graham?
Where's it located, though?
Right next to the observatory. The large binocular telescope, which happens to be right next to the Vatican Observatory on Mount Graham in Stafford. Yes, they have a Vatican Observatory in Arizona.
Yeah,
so
they sure do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let me find you some coordinates.
I'll beat you to it.
Well,
it is. Okay, all right. It's down. It's kind of close to New Mexico. I wasn't that far off.
Oh.
And it is near where the great William Bill Cooper lived in Egan. He lived in Egan, Arizona. I've been meaning to go down there too to check out his home. But so
Jim says it's located Mount Graham near Tucson, Arizona, at an altitude of about 3,200 meters. You can't get much better than that for directions. Thank you, Jim. So
yeah, there it is, Mountain Peak, Mount Graham. Yeah, it's kind of between Phoenix and Tucson, but closer to New Mexico.
Wow, might be a road trip back.
Yeah.
You're an adventurous guy. It's closer to Mexico. Yeah, he says that too. Closer to Mexico. Yeah. So, well, there you go. You might be able to check it out
every day, don't we?
You do. I think kudos to the Catholics. They have up-teen amounts of funding. I think if they're prepared to do the research, I think it's great. But I guess the big question is, how much of the research will they share, if at all? So southwest of Tucson. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah. So, I don't know. But I think it's a start, but they probably know more than most people. So, now, as you get into some of this stuff, you're going to have your naysayers for sure. And when talking about some of this, they're just like, who is this? These these people, these extraterrestrials from Venus who helped us do what? Why haven't we heard about it? Why haven't we? I just think of all these disclosures, and we can't say that we've had extraterrestrial contact and we know that there exists. And yet, I've done up-teen shows I think Joe and I did a show. We did something like 8 segments with all different testimonials from astronauts, from presidents, from people who were there when, Eisenhower met with an extraterrestrial. Like, this is all stuff is all over the place. It's not like a secret. So why fight it? Just
I
like come
find
out
it
and say
right.
it.
Exactly. Well, and it also, I'm just reading some comments about Mount Graham, was a holy mountain to the American Indians. And
Oh,
in their
wonder why.
pictographs and other information, oral tradition,
Right.
the mountain is a stargate, is someone saying here. And there are plenty of mountains. Why take over the one that happens to be a sacred mountain to the Indians? So there again,
Right there.
more information that
But that's what they
Vatican
do.
knows. They
The church
know.
would build they would always build over power spots, temples, goddess temples, any power spot that had, or known portals or power spots. I
Yep.
mean, that's not normal, or isn't it? It is normal. What am I saying? So, of course, this is not going to be any different, but I'm surprised to hear this information. I shouldn't be, but I am, that they would even go into indigenous land,
Yeah.
sacred land.
Yeah, they don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
If they can take it over, they will. But,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's something else to talk about.
yeah, right. Huh?
While you're at your conference. Did you know? Here's a fun fact, right?
Right.
So, portals, and power spots that attracts ET, right? How many come through portals?
Well, here in Sedona in the Verde Valley I'm in right now, just 10 miles away is a location called the Bradshaw Ranch. And it's been compared to the Skinwalker Ranch, the very famous one. The History Channel has got a series on it. And they are these paranormal hotspots. And I would suspect that Mount Graham would have some elements of this too, where cryptid creatures can appear. If you take pictures around there, all kinds of orbs are going to be in your photos. And we have it at the conference I'm speaking at. I was just sitting next to him listening to some presentations, is Tom Dongo. And he's the master on Bradshaw Ranch, and more photographs of paranormal phenomenon happen there. So if you know where to look, it's a wealth of information. So we were talking about disclosure. Boy, just go to Mount Adams, where the East City Ranch is in Washington State, or Mount Shasta, and do a sky watch over the mountain. And almost every night you're going to see something. Or the UFO tours here. I mean, it's right there, hidden in plain sight. People just have to have a little gumption among themselves to take a chance and take a look. See if you see it.
Absolutely. Well, it always interests me why there are so many sightings in and around some of these really large mountain ranges. I know some of them, there's talk of underground bases and things of that nature, but they seem to be attractive things, like even volcanoes. Like, they've been seen coming in and out of live volcanoes. It's like, all right.
All over the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Michelle, most UFO sightings are seen around or above volcanoes. Begging the question, why?
Right.
Perhaps it's tapping into the heat source that comes out of volcanoes. Perhaps they have a way to transfer through the mountain and get into the large cavities that exist at volcanoes. And that's where the mythical Talos in Mount Shasta and other civilizations are said to reside. The neck of Mount Shasta, by the way, goes down 400 miles into the earth. And it's not just the Telosians. The U.S. has a secret base there. The whole eastern side of Mount Shasta is a military base and is inaccessible. But it's said the reptilians have something down there and other ETs as well. So I get into some of this in Future Esoteric. I also wrote another book called Sacred Places North America. And, it's just hard to deny that a lot of these places have these kind of paranormal encounters and activity all year round.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes them a sacred place, just like Mount Wilson down there in Arizona. I mean, where the telescope is. There's just so much to these places that it's worth taking a look and spending some time there.
There we go. Didn't Jimmy Church claim to see a huge doorway a couple of years ago on Mount Shasta?
It was actually on Mount Adams that they got a picture of it. And so right after that happened, I was going up to Esoteric Ranch, who it's owned by James Gilliland, and he's a lifetime contactee. And he was having me as a speaker at one of the conferences up there. Mm-hmm. So one day I went hiking up there because we saw him the night before, just lights coming and going into this doorway-like region. And so I'm a athletic guy. I wanted to hike up there and see it for myself. So I got up to about 10,500 feet, right about the tree line. Right. And we looked over the side of the mountain. It's the western-facing slope of Mount Adams, and it's just such an inhospitable terrain. I call it the zone of silence because there's nobody in there. The lava rock is so sharp it'll cut your boots up, and they're just sheer walls to keep people out. Nobody goes back there. People don't realize this, and I talk about it in my Antarctica talk. There are parts of the world that no human below the ice of Antarctica has ever really seen what's down there. And there are other regions like this western flank of Mount Adams that are so hard to get to. You could probably fly a drone over it. That might be the best way to survey it. So I came back down and I said, wow, James, there's no way that those are flashlights or Jeep lights. There's no roads back there or anything. But we see these lights coming and going. I said, has anybody ever gotten back there? Because it's really hard to go. And he said, well, there was a guy a couple of years ago who was a really experienced mountaineer, and he said, I want to go try to find this door. And it's pretty good way up the mountain, a little bit higher than 10.5 where I made it. So he went back there and for several days was doing what he had to do to get through this lava field. And as he started approaching the area, because he kind of knew where to go and look, he just got this foreboding feeling like, stop, turn around, go back. You don't belong here. Go away. What are you doing? You're still coming. Go away. Go, go. And he kept going and going. Finally, he turned the corner. He saw it. He didn't photograph it, but he saw it. And the feeling was, you take one step closer and your head's going to explode. We're going to kill you. You're going to die. So he turned around and ran. And he came back to Esoteric Ranch, and James told me the guy was white as like he saw a ghost.
Wow. And
it took him a couple of days for him to tell him what happened. And
that's pretty frightening. That's pretty
frightening. And you know, they, like anyone else, have a reason to protect what they consider their realm, this zone of silence, this area that humans are not meant to go.
So he's getting telepathic messages, basically. I mean, at least he knew enough to heed the message and leave. Do you think, with that being said, that all this money and the space race, as I call it, all this money being pumped into this, do you think it would be better suited to be exploring areas like this in Antarctica and, you know, deep sea exploration? There's so much we haven't even touched on this very planet, but yet everybody wants to go to the stars. I mean, I get it, but this is your home. This is the planet that sustains you, that you know for sure will sustain you.
Well, who says they haven't already done it? They're just not telling us, because
good point.
with these kind of budgets. Well, in the book Future Esoteric, it starts out with a section called Secrets. Right. And it goes into the black projects and the siphoning of money and how they've been backward engineering this technology for quite a long time, almost a century.
Wow.
From what we even know. But then you have people like Ben Rich, who was the head of the skunk works at Lockheed Martin, in charge of backward engineering this. And on his deathbed, he had a couple pretty big revelations for us. And here's someone who knows his stuff, but he felt like Many others do, including Eisenhower, who gave the famous speech warning about the military-industrial complex. And I think Ben Rich was doing the same. But he was saying, we already have the technology to take ET home. And this is in the late 1980s, he's saying this.
Right.
And then he said that, we can't handle the truth, that they have technology that is many hundred years in advance, like our Star Trek future that's being withheld from us. And I think that's why he had second thoughts about taking this information to his grave, and what does he have to lose on his deathbed to make these confessions? Because of course he's done many non-disclosure, non-compete forms that he had to sign. And when you're almost dead, what do you got to lose? What are you going to do? Come and kill me? Well, I'm going to probably die in a couple of days anyway. So
yeah, exactly. Do you think that there are many people in the 1% that are living the Star Trek life, basically?
Well, that's what a lot of the super soldiers have to say, is that there is this breakaway civilization, and that one of the breakaway civilizations is this interplanetary corporate conglomerate.
Right.
That's a name Corey Good has popularized, but others have used it as well, and saying, yeah, the corporation. Kind of like the movie Avatar. Remember how that was a big corporation
that
they were all working for with the whole planet Earth, and they're out exploiting planets. Well, that could also be, that's like timeline 2, future of humanity in 300 years. That's if things go totally awry on the timeline that we're on today. Of course, the timeline we want to have is the timeline 1, where we reach a golden age, where we reach the potential to have a utopia civilization on this planet. And that's what I explore in the final section of Future Esoteric.
Of the book. Right. Well, I mean, let's get into just because of everything going on in the world right now. Obviously, you have a lot talking about this Great Reset, New World Order. New World Order to me sounds like, I don't look at it like everybody else, within reason. I think if we want to get into some kind of a galactic federation and existence, become, after all, we're Earthlings, we're, pretty much. So is it better to get into a proper one world government to be able to get into a planetary mindset, into a planetary organization? I'm not talking about one world order where, we're all brought into slavery here. I'm talking about, does it not make sense to have a one government? Does it not make sense to have one currency, if we can all agree on what that is?
Or how about no currency? How about the end of money? And that's also a chapter in the Utopia section. Because in Star Trek, there is never a scene where people are paying money either to each other, or if they say chocolate shake, they're not depositing tokens into the replicator, which produces the chocolate shake. It just comes right up for them.
Right.
So part of the Great Awakening, which will lead to the enlightenment of humanity, is this age of transparency, where, yes, that's about the only way it could work, Michelle. But just like the word Illuminati, which means the enlightened ones, that word has been hijacked. So when you say a one world government, many people are going to say, hey, they just want to use that name, as we all think it would probably be something really good for humanity, but they would rip us off. So unless we enter this age of transparency, forget about it. They're going to try to hijack it and control us that way. And
like everything
in
else.
fact, we're already seeing it happening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So if we go back and let's talk about reverse engineering. Let's talk about some of the things that, again, I'm only touching on it because of the recent, I'm getting a lot of questions about this congressional hearing and such, but this is something that we've been doing for a long time, right? Which apparently started, there's a lot of stories, reverse engineering is going back to, World War I. of course, World War II. But have they actually achieved, flying crafts? I don't know. Now we know they have, because most of us can't even tell the difference. They've mastered it to the point of even the drones are massive. And what are we really dealing with? Are we dealing with, military abductions? Are we dealing with military sightings? Are we dealing with extraterrestrials? And it's really, it's easy for them to mask everything because they've pretty much achieved it all. So it's easy for them to say, no, this is us, this is us, this is us. Be scared of this, be scared of this, false flag, false flag. Like,
Right.
What do you believe, right?
Well, that when they do that, they're obviously not doing it to benefit humanity. They're doing it to scare us, to keep us in a fear state, because then we're controllable.
Right.
See, when we're happy and in a good mood all the time, then you start to see things for what they are, and the coincidences and the synchronicities start to pick up, and good begets good, and it just carries on in a forward motion. And I saw one of the comments about Bob Lazar.
Yeah, I'll bring it
He's
back
been
up for you.
vindicated. Bob Lazar spoke that he was working on backward engineering these craft way back in the 80s, and I've been on Coast to Coast with George Knapp, and I met him in person. We did an interview at UFO Mega Con a few years. He broke that story, and Bob Lazar was trying to be hidden his identity, but then he had to come out to protect himself. Everything he said has come to be true. So I would say follow what he said, even in those old interviews. In fact, he was talking about element 116, and I bring that up in several of my books, that it has been, since his time, replicated in a laboratory and proven to exist. So once again, a Bob Lazar proof down the pike. And so when he was working on these projects, he said that he was brought in by Teller himself, the father of the H-bomb. And it was because they were trying to open up a basketball size nuclear engine off of one of the craft. They were just going to cut it open, and kapow! It killed all the scientists.
Wow.
And so Teller had to find some new physicists to bring in, and one of them was Bob Lazar. So when he went public with this stuff, they were just out to blemish his name and take him off the record and discredit him any way possible. But there's still enough evidence out there to prove that he is who he is, and he went through the certain channels he went through to be in these programs.
Yeah, he really got hit hard with, they really went out of their way to discredit him. I mean, astronauts, and especially from the Apollo missions, I mean, they've all come forward. Everybody's under a gag order, and you could see in some of those early interviews, they were told not to talk about anything, and you could just see them on camera. They just wanted to talk about it, and a couple of them looked sort of, maybe we don't want to talk about it, like, is that really a thing? But you really did see that it bothered them immensely that it was being kept from everybody, because there was so much going on. And some of these astronauts went on to basically, they became the whistleblowers. They were reputable whistleblowers. Nobody really heard of Bob Lazar a whole lot before he basically came out with it and made it known as to who he was. So now we're looking at astronauts, and people were looking at them as being more credible. I mean, you even look at Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator. I mean, even he comes forward and says, yes, they're there. We know they're there. But why isn't any of this being talked about during this congressional hearing? Like, why are we all sitting here being led to believe, well, we don't know what this is? And I understand we have to be cautious because we don't know, the Russians, the Chinese, are they coming in? What do they have? Report everything now. So it goes from say nothing to tell us everything, but we don't know. I'm just, everybody that's got one of these, seriously, right, are seeing more out there than what.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Abian Mystic, and welcome to this.
Sorry about that. Yeah. I have links open, And when I restarted my computer, a couple of them wanted to play.
No, that's okay.
So, yeah, no, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're at that age where people really just have to use their own ability of discernment
Mm.
on a lot of these subjects. And I say it in my first chapter called the Author's Karma Statement, that we've all had many experiences of our own, myself included,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to use your own discernment of what you hear out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it comes from within. It comes from the knowing, the gnosis of knowing within that what you've experienced is very interpersonal. It's like about as unique as your own fingerprint.
Right.
We just had a person give a presentation about dreams and talking about deja vu. And deja vu, according to Susan Morgan, who just gives this great presentation, is us dreaming of a future scenario. So when it happens, it's like this interpersonal, whoa, what is this all about? And oftentimes those deja vu experiences are just ordinary kind of occurrences that don't really mean anything to anyone, even yourself, but you have this feeling that something very significant just happened, a remembering of a dream you once had. So don't discount your dreams either. They could also give you really good clues of discernment into a lot of these unseen realms, is the subtitle of Future Esoteric.
Yeah, I've always looked at deja vu as even, past life memories, or perhaps traveling while we sleep, just leaving the body, traveling. Maybe it's like an abduction, an experiencer thing where, they're taking you somewhere, or they're moving you around dimensionally. And you just have little memories of that going around, fast forward in time, back forth, as I've had deja vus where I come up and it's just like I know I've been there several times, but you kind of wonder yourself, well, but because I've been there in life, or I end up going, you're traveling the other side of the world thinking I can't possibly have had a deja vu because I've never been here before. But yet everything makes sense. It's like, no, that's about right. Tamara, deja vu is the post notes to let you know you're on your right path. There we go. So
that.
So what about downloads and visions given to you by ET? Because some people can't separate those from knowing whether or not they're in dream state or not.
I had a psychic who was working on me. In fact, she was also a massage therapist. I'm getting this great massage, and she goes, I'm reading from you that you have these really intense signals and messages that are coming out like packets. I didn't know anything about that the first time I heard it, but It's kind of interesting that downloads you could say, okay, I'm getting all this information coming in, either in my dreams or in meditation, or however it comes through to each individual. But don't discount the fact that you're also an antennae. You're receiving and you're giving. So it's a come and go, really. So if you're getting downloads, just also keep in mind that you're also probably emitting pretty important information out there as well.
Right.
Do you ever get that impression that you're also sending and receiving?
I'm sure I do. I receive quite a bit. I always say that, I'm led even into my research, that I'm just led. I'll start off on one thing and I'll end up someplace else. And there are times I don't remember how I actually got there, but it's like, okay, obviously this is something I'm supposed to see. And it eventually ends up being pertinent to whatever it is I need to know. So I don't know. I always chalk it up as, the universe is such an interesting place. But so I'm going to back up, and I'd like to hit on the Fourth Reich.
Oh, yeah. Great subject. It's a chapter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know you have a very sophisticated audience in the outer realm who have heard of Project Paperclip, which was bringing in not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of Nazis after World War II, not only into aerospace like Hermann Oberth and Werner von Braun, the father of rocketry that helped with the Mercury and the Apollo programs to put a man on the moon, but also into corporate leadership roles, also into the intelligence community, into the newly formed CIA, which was formerly the OSS, and 47 became the CIA with Reinhard Gehlen, who should have been in Nuremberg, as many of them should have been, put up on war crimes. But they came over here with a new life, sometimes a new identity, and a new job to do. But the thing is, they always stayed loyal to the Fourth Reich. And they also brought in the MK Ultra psychiatrists who were working on the mass medicated psychiatry, the psyops of the Third Reich. How do you think they got all those German people behind the cause? Well, they were pros at this. And so they came over here and got even better. But that's where the word MK is mind control, spelled with the German spelling Kontolle.
Right.
So those MK Ultra scientists also came over here. And again, they stayed loyal to the Reich. So James Farrell, colleague of mine, I've met him and follow his work and read his books.
Right.
He had a lot of evidence in some of his books that they were passing attaché cases, meaning briefcases full of documents, with their South American and Antarctican brethren, meaning the Third Reich, when it collapsed, never surrendered. The armies of Germany, the Wehrmacht, the Army, the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, and the Navy surrendered. The Third Reich never surrendered. They went underground into what's known as the Third Force. So we have the Cold War between the Soviets and NATO countries.
Right.
And this third power was now an intelligence force. That's what the Fourth Reich became. And they were just fanning the flames of discontent between the Cold War powers. And they almost brought us to the brink of nuclear war with the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. But so when I heard Joseph Farrell talk about the passing of information and how they all stayed loyal to the Reich, it started to make a lot more sense. How even our FBI and CIA knew they were down there. And I republished some documents and talk about it in some of my presentations about in South America. They had all these enclaves. Right. So there was a History Channel show called Hunting Hitler in 3 seasons. So there's probably about 30 episodes of Hunting Hitler. Yeah, he lived. He survived. He got out of there. They killed one of his doppelgangers, and he was spotted all over the place. Not only Hitler himself, but Martin Bormann, who was the number 2 at the end of World War II. He was the money man, and he helped get out all the pallets of gold, a lot of priceless artifacts from the museums of Europe, which still haven't all been recovered.
The Amber Room, that in itself is still missing out of everything that's been
Spirit
recovered.
Destiny and a lot of other very important art and historical projects. They've been gone since World War II. But the most important thing is he was able to work with our CIA and with our FBI, not only getting these Nazi hunters off the trail. And you got to understand, they got one guy, Adolf Eichmann, and he was whisked off to Israel, tried and hung. And that scared the living bejesus out of the rest of them. And they said, no more of that.
No.
And guess what? No more happened.
Right.
And so they lived their lives. Look, Michelle, I was driving through South America 3.5 years ago, and I have my Lonely Planet book, and we pull into this little town, and there's really not much there in Bolivia. And hey, let's check the Lonely Planet. What does it say? Oh, there's an old lumber facility, and behind it was a little shack where Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, France, whisked out through the rat lines, is what they're called, largely given new identities and the ability to flee after World War II, relocated in South America, and Klaus Barbie, under a new name, lived out his whole natural life.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Joseph Mengele, that
Right.
maniacal doctor in Auschwitz, and many others
Mm-hmm.
that were never brought to justice. So you got to understand that this group survived the war.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did they survive the war, they left with immense wealth. And I think this is the backbone of the globalists we see today implementing their new world order, and so many other dastardly deeds that are being festooned upon the people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I completely believe that, because there's a belief system in place that Hitler was actually related to the Rothschilds, and if he was related to the Rothschilds, they would have taken him to Rothschild Island, right near Antarctica, and then bam, bam, Bob's your uncle, and you are living fine. So, so yeah, I could see how that could happen, and with the amount of wealth that was pilfered out of that war, they would have been able to finance pretty much anything that they wanted to, including this entire movement. So basically, you're saying this is sort of like the base of our shadow government.
You got it. That's exactly what it is.
Right.
And anytime there's a shadow government, a secret government, which are chapters in Future Esoteric in the secret section, you cannot have transparency by the nature of all these secrets. So this is part of the problem we find ourselves in now. It has gone so deep and so comprehensive and so compartmentalized that it's hard even for insiders to get the full picture if you're one of those whistleblowers who come out with it. And so a researcher like myself, I'm just kind of piecing together what we can get and then trying to paint this mosaic, this big picture of what's really going on. And that's why it's a very much esoteric history, esoteric science, esoteric politics, in how they have managed to not only create this globalist world order, but are now implementing it with some very dastardly and dubious ways of going about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of it's like hidden in plain sight. This is an example. Which says one of the national parks in the United States had rail cars with World War II German signs on them. That's like, why would you want to do that? I mean, I know you have a lot of whole naysayers about that. I was in possession of a personal collection that belonged to an officer who's also a dentist, and there's a long story about this. I can actually send that to you just to save time here. But the collection was private, and they had heard of this specific collection, but there were always just copies, and I happened to have all the original photographs because it came from like a doctor, dentist sort of thing. I can't, things find me, and so I'll just leave that right there. But I eventually donated this collection, Holocaust collection, to a friend of mine who I think now it's going to end up in a museum, which is where it belongs. And anybody who says these atrocities weren't a thing, these are images I can never unsee. And there's just a lot with that. To think that this could have come to this part of the world and to continue on behind the scenes is just atrocious to me. Amelia, yeah, she's just co-hosting from the chat room tonight. So everything evil is always hidden in plain sight. We need to be more observant. I think that's a big part of it, is we need to be more observant. When you talk about secret sciences, what kind of secret sciences are we talking, aside from just reverse engineering? Because they had a fascination with a lot of weird, crazy things.
Oh yeah,
right? The perfect race, the twin thing. There was a lot of crazy things that they were into. Sorry,
and they're not really crazy. They're actually starting to come out now as healing modalities, such as the Rife machine, which was using frequency to just shatter cancer. So everything in the world has a frequency. Yes. You and me, a resonant frequency is very individual to our DNA. I mean, it's very specific. just like every solid piece of matter, including cancer.
Right.
So if you find what that resonant frequency is, a certain kind of cancer in a person, Rife, who almost 100 years ago was using this microscope that he developed to look at that cancer, find what the frequency is, and then use these Rife frequencies to cure cancer. And he was having a 100% success rate before the powers that be came in and crushed him. And we see this time and time again. I mean, this is the story of Nikola Tesla as well.
It is.
But other secret sciences, and that's a chapter in Future Esoteric.
Right.
One that's really fascinated me, and actually I was on Ancient Aliens TV show talking about auditive levitation.
Yes.
And the example that I give in the Secret Sciences chapter was about a doctor from Sweden who was asked to come out 100 years ago to a monastery in Tibet.
Yes.
There was certain Western medicine treatments that were actually beneficial to the Tibetan people, and he cured a very high level lama who was very grateful and said, well, now we'd like to repay the favor and show you something that we do here. And it is along the lines of auditive levitation. Some of Dr. Jarl's illustrations I reproduce in Future Esoteric, in some of the in the Secret Sciences chapter. In the back of the chapter, I always have illustrations and photos.
Yes.
And so you can see when Dr. Jarl went out there, he went out to a Tibetan plateau location where they wanted to move some rocks up to a level. And so the rock was in the middle, and they created 3 concentric horseshoe rings around the blocks. One level of rings were all the drummers. The next level were the trumpeters, those long Tibetan trumpets. And then the vast majority were all the rest of the monks who came out from the monastery in the 3rd ring. And they would start this melodic chant, rhythm, frequency through their voice and through the drums and the trumpets. And the rock just started to move. And then when they all looked up, it would move up to the ledge.
Wow.
Using this auditive levitation technique, where we're still trying to play catch up and learn how to do this. But they did it partly through the resonant frequency of their voices and sound, but also of their mental abilities. And that I found out recently was also part of how they did it, is that they were all latched onto it mentally. So when
like
the boulder started shaking, then they looked up and they were actually visually placing it up on that ledge.
Wow.
And then an ox-drawn cart would come in, they'd place another rock and do it all over again. And he saw them do it half a dozen times.
That's discipline, because you have to work as a collective to be able to have that kind of focus, which is like amazing to me. But I mean, everything. I mean, frequencies do heal, on so many levels. I think, we actually have medicine talking about that a little bit now, but we don't get the full gambit like many of the spiritual people do. So, I mean, that's what you're talking about, is an entirely different level. And it's just phenomenal to me. Makes you wonder, have you ever heard of the, what is it, in Florida, the Coral
Castle?
Yes. Yeah. And there's that same theory that he was able to levitate some of these stones. That's, kind of what went around with that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think one man could have done that?
Well, he did. And he famously worked alone in the middle of the night. His name was Ed Lee Scalin.
Yes.
And I was speaking at a conference a couple of years ago, and I said, oh, you got to take me down to see the Coral Castle in Florida.
Right.
And my host did. She was very gracious, and she'd never been there. It's amazing how many people live in Miami and have never been to the Coral Castle. And get this, Michelle, the Coral Castle is the only modern megalithic building in the world.
Really?
Only one that's built in the last 100 years.
Wow.
And it was built by one little guy who's only like 99-pound weakling from Latvia. And he built this whole complex called the Coral Castle in devotion to his Sweet 16 this woman from his home country who stood him up at his wedding.
Wow.
And so he moved out here. Yeah, he was a heartbroken guy.
Aw.
But he had it in him to build single-handedly this megalithic stone complex. And he would quarry the stones himself. It was originally at another location, and he needed to move it to the next location.
Yeah.
And so he ordered a flatbed truck to show up at the first location. And they said, well, we'll give you a hand moving those stones. He says, I don't need it. Just come back tomorrow morning and it'll be all fully loaded and we'll move it out there. And sure enough, it was. Truck pulled up to the current location and they said, you sure you don't need help unloading it? No, I didn't need your help loading it. Just come back tomorrow.
Nobody questioned this. They thought maybe you should be watching the guy.
Not only off the truck, but already some of them set in place. He did that all alone.
Wow.
And a couple of kids, it's in Homestead, Florida, the location. A couple of kids in Homestead decided they were going to spy on him.
Right.
And they
was
said
my
he
question.
had these cone-shaped wands that he would work with. And then he'd also have all kinds of levers and pulleys. He was an expert in moving that. And Michelle, there's still some stones that he had placed so strategically that a child can spin them. Many ton block stones, including a door that a little child could open that weighed about 8 tons. The largest stones weigh 33 tons, and he moved them single-handedly. Wow. Not only did he place them in this closed perimeter megalithic wall structure with his own little small castle there where he lived. Yeah. But he also created astronomical alignments. So he put up obelisks, which would be able to watch the movement of celestial bodies. So the guy was in tune to something to allow him to do that. And when questioned, he said, how did you do this? He would never give away his secrets. The only thing he said was he knew the secrets of how the Egyptians built the pyramids in Egypt. That was the only clue he gave. Right. So clearly some kind of reincarnated ascended master
I would
the
think
knowledge.
So. Yeah. Well, you sure tapped into an ancient technology or a futuristic technology, but it's just one of those stories that is just so fascinating. And something else that's really fascinating you touched on a little bit was the looking glass. Now, when you talk about the looking glass, are you talking about the looking glass in general? Are you talking about the chronovisor? What is your whole take on that? Because we've had some people kind of dabble with it, but apparently this is a resurgence. Like the people
that is a resurgence. Well, first of all, looking glass comes from Alice in Wonderland.
Yes,
that she had a form of looking glass, and I think the projects borrowed that name. Looking glass is kind of like an umbrella term. We have many different time travel as well as devices that would let you peer into the future or the past.
Right.
Well, now the future is nothing but a series of probabilities, so it can change in time, and that's what the chronovisor was originally developed to do. Right. And then the aliens who did a demonstration for some of our generals in 1964 showed them the yellow cube. And that is what's featured on my third book in the series, Beyond Esoteric. That's a representation of the yellow cube. Yeah.
Yes.
We talked about that last time. So if your listeners want to go back and get that interview. But so even the Stargate technology, and I reproduced an image of the Stargate, which was discovered in Egypt over 100 years ago. That's one of the looking glass technologies, just to use a broad general term to describe it all. And so some of these devices have been co-opted by the black hats, and they have been trying to game the future using the chronovisor, the looking glass, as well as people jumping through the Stargate. Now it's called the jump room, which is a version of a Stargate, but is in this category of looking glass technology. And they've been using it to try to game us onto timeline 2 scenario. Right. And that is the destruction of the Earth becoming like Avatar movie where we're just going out and exploiting planets, rather than the Star Trek future of benevolent humans who are working with other extraterrestrial groups and bringing forth a better world for all of us. That's what science does, is it builds upon what is already known. And so the looking glass technology has now been co-opted by the white hats, the good guys. And there is this group now called the Guardians of the Looking Glass, who are putting out warnings, about things to come, false flag operations. The first one that they highlighted was last month, and they said that there would be a shooting, a big kerfluffle in New York City, and it needs to be curtailed because it's going to be blamed on the Russians, and they're going to try to use it as a way to get Americans to believe that we need to fight the Russians in Ukraine or whatever else. That's the thing about false flags, is they're always just trying to blame it on a perceived enemy, but it's a state-sponsored terrorist. And what happened in New York City last month was there was that shooting in the subway, and the guy was wearing a gas mask, and he was trying to gas them, and he was shooting them up. 29 people got injured. Fortunately, none died. That false flag was largely derailed. Notice how we don't hear a single peep about that in the news anymore. Had it gone the way they wanted it to, it would be still, I'm sure,
we'd still be talking about it. Right.
So the Guardians of the Looking Glass are actually using the Looking Glass to say, being a little tattletale and saying, here's another false flag we got to watch out for. So the one in May, which could still erupt, is an anthrax scare in Washington, D.C., is what they said. Now, just the fact that we know that it could occur is how we can prevent it from happening, right? So the skeptics will say, well, you're just saying that this is going to happen. It never happens. And so what are you talking about?
We know you're really stopping it, and it's really a thing. But what people don't realize with the Guardians of the Looking Glass is allegedly they are ex-military who were made privy to this technology pretty early on, and just sort of let their sight go for a while, like without, really doing much with it. But then again, this resurgence, all of a sudden now they're like, what is going on? Everybody's tuning into them. So obviously people want the truth, and we can't rely on mainstream media. Right, I know.
What I always say is, hey, if you want to get the perspective of the globalists and let them tell you how to think, then knock yourself out. Go watch all the mainstream media you want. But to me and you, and I'm sure your listeners, is just one big waste of time. You're not getting the truth at all. You're getting propaganda. I have a friend, mine in San Francisco. We talk about these things, and he grew up in the Soviet Union. He said, in times of Soviet Union, we knew it's propaganda on Pravda. Everybody knew it, and it was just a big joke. But you here in America, you get your propaganda too, but you don't even know it. And that's pretty true. Most Americans don't even, they watch mainstream media. Oh, I watch Fox because that's the opposing side. No, it's not. It's all controlled opposition.
It's all really pretty much the same thing. There's a formula, so like most television, there's a formula. All your favorite shows have a formula. If it's a certain genre show, it's going to have a certain formula. I know this. I've spent 20 years working in television. I can tell you there are formulas. So I completely agree with you on that. There's a lot of documentation even as to how governments and militaries use the media as a tool. So if that's out there, and there are actual, documents on this or papers written on this, and I think you have to maybe consider that it's a possibility, if anything, Amelia says, out of all the tech geniuses and Nobel winners, who, in your opinion, got it right? That we heard of.
Well, Tesla was never nominated for
sadly.
Nobel. He should have got one.
But he's the tech guy who.
I don't even know if I have an answer to that, because it's controlled opposition. If you do the kind of science that the globalists want you to do, then you'll get a Nobel Prize. I have a chapter in Future Esoteric in the secret section called Media Manipulation, and I do have links and resources and documents that I drew from to write this chapter to show how much has been manipulated, and
Yes.
it's all just fantasy. Don't even bother with it.
Right. Here's somebody I should connect you with, and I'll fill you in on it later. Mockingbird Media, owned by Deep State CIA. The truth is coming from whistleblowers, and we all get gang stalked and death threats. Yep.
Good point, Penny. We sure do.
I'll connect you to later.
Here's the thing.
I'll message you later, Brad. So you'll love it.
Well, here's the thing, Michelle. They got all the money in the world. They own the printing machines and the Federal Reserve and all the central banks around the world. So they got control of the money. Yeah. So they can hire and buy and pay for all the judges, all the politicians. They're all in their pockets.
Yeah.
And by them, I mean the globalists, this Council on 300. And I just had a really great conversation at the conference today here in Sedona with someone who knows a bit about these things. And my question was, because he says he's in constant contact with benevolent ET groups. And my question was, who really runs the world? And he said, yeah, it's a council of 300, the ones we've heard about, this Davos group. You know, you could look at the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. They're really more the colonels to the real generals who he said, who's really running the planet? He said it is the reptilian agenda. That's why things are so sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the media. They just love that. They love us. To be incited to violence. Yeah, sex and violence. Yeah, blood ritual. Do it. We want to see it. We want some of that. They get off on it. That's called louche. That is our human emotion, which is actually food to them. That's how sick and dark and deep it goes. That's why the subtitle of Beyond Esoteric, my latest book in this series, is Escaping Prison Planet. Because we absolutely have to know the ways and the means that they're using to manipulate us to get what they want. And in many regards, humans are just livestock to them. We are just chattel. Much in the same way that we have cows and pigs and chickens in our, you know, they're our livestock. Well, we're livestock to them. So there's a chapter in Beyond Esoteric called Being Aware of Predatory Species. We like to think we're on the top of the totem pole, but we're not.
Right.
And they will come for those that they want to consume, which are mainly adolescents. Because you and I, Michelle, we've been alive long enough. We've accumulated so many toxins that they expose us to.
We're just tough.
Yeah, we don't taste as good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately not. So congratulations. You made it this long. Might as well keep going.
I know. I'm sour. That's
you.
what it is. A little volatile and too sour. You know, it's funny because even when you go back into back in time to the Gnostics and the Gnostic teachings, they spoke of beings called archons, which were and they would literally feed off of the energy of humanity, and they would cause all this negativity because they needed that to feed. And you know, as you learn more about them, you kind of wonder, are we one of the same as you know, the reptilians who are here, aside from the difference that archons apparently they can't survive here. They can't make it here. Right.
Let's unpack the archons a little bit, because this is really important for people to understand.
Okay.
It's more of an archonic network. And I would say on the top of that archonic network, let's talk in terms of the totem pole again, are once again the reptilians.
Right.
They are the controllers of the archonic network. Next tier down could be the gray aliens, which, by the way, all gray aliens are test tube babies. They're all created in a laboratory. Many would say they have no souls. I would tend to agree with that. The reptilians do. Reptilians have souls. They are natural born as well. And they take care of their own. Nobody slips through the cracks.
Right.
There are no starving reptilians. There are no, unless they get lost in a mission or something.
Right.
But they take care of their own. We don't. Humans do not take care of our own.
No, it's true.
Perhaps it's by manipulation that we don't. We should and we will in the future. That's how we enter the golden age and the age of transparency. We have to. We have to look after. We're only as advanced as the lowest common denominator. So every starving child there is in Africa and around the world is a reflection on the human race. That's as good as we've gotten. That 1/5 of the human race is going to bed starving tonight. Well done, humans. Way to go. You're really looking out for your own. Well, like I said, that's manipulation. So let's not blame ourselves. Let's blame the control mechanism. And that control mechanism is the archonic network. So let's unpack it a little bit. What are archons? Well, it has been recognized by shamans and those seers in tribal communities all the way up to Aleister Crowley and some of the black magicians who have tapped into this network to get what they need done. And you can do that. So now it gives new meaning to making a deal with the devil, doesn't it? Yeah, you can do that, but be careful what you wish for. And you know how all the famous people are doing all this stupid shit? Well, unfortunately, that's a sign that they've made that deal. Why? You want to get famous? You want to get rich? Really? You're going to sell your soul for that? Bad move. Real bad move.
Right.
And again, this is manipulation of the archonic network. And so below them are these entities which do not have material form at all. They are the jinn in terms of Middle Eastern discussion of them. They are what we would call the archons. This is Carlos Castaneda spoke about his shamanic master, Don Juan, who would intercede with this archonic network. And they are these fourth dimensional entities that we can barely catch a glimpse of now and again, because we're so locked into these third dimensional bodies, this third dimensional reality, that we're just so dense and we're so thick we can't see who and what they are. They're here all around us. And guess what? They don't like happy people at all. Why? Because they can't get into us. They can't manipulate us. They can't bring us to that fear or anger state where we're creating loosh, right? And that's food to them.
That's right.
So we're a food source to them. And that's why I'm saying it's so important to understand this, because when we cut it off, when you bring yourself up into a happier state, you mean nothing to them. And why do you think there's a depopulation agenda, an anti-human depopulation agenda, which we're seeing the ugly face of it rear its head day upon day? Every bad news piece of information you get is because they're trying to bring us there collectively to keep us in control. Look, because when we're in an anger state, when we're fearful, we're most controllable them. And that's what these MK Ultra Nazi scientists were also doing, was to harm us, is to collectively keep us down. But the Great Awakening is all of us understanding what they're up to and saying, no more, not me. You ain't going to play with me no more. And so more and more of us who are waking up to this can not only protect ourselves from these predatory species, but also help others awaken to it as well. And that's what it's going to take. Michelle, the revolution is consciousness. The revolution of all of us is just waking up. We don't go out in the streets and fight them eye for eye, tooth for tooth. We'll get slaughtered. We'll lose a lot of great light workers that way. We just have to wake up and laugh at them and make fun of them.
High vibes, as I say.
The one thing they can't stand is awakened humans who see through their agenda. And that's what I was getting to before I didn't get to the final point, is that's what the globalists fear the most, is when we hijack the narrative, that we start to make our own rules of engagement, when we start to make our own concepts of how this world is really run and take away their narrative, then they fail. Then it's game over and we win.
So basically,
keep that in mind, everybody, that and I told this even to some people who I know who are just so despondent and ready to check out and considering suicide. I said, you can't do that. You are here for a very specific reason. And this could very well be almost all of our last lifetimes here on Earth. So you really have to make the most of it.
Right.
And just by being aware of it, the
Right.
consciousness is the
awareness.
revolution.
Yeah.
Being a part of it.
Right.
You know, being
Evolving
that part
awareness, all of that, raising vibrations.
Yep.
I have to actually do a quick station ID. So for those who are just tuning in, you're listening to The Outer Realm with myself, Michelle DeRoche, and Amelia Bazzano, who is in chat, and our amazing guest, Brad Olsen, talking about book 2. Yes, people, Future Esoteric, The Hidden Realms.
The Unseen Realms.
The Unseen Realms. I'm sorry. Look at me being just a
That's
terrible
the Arconic
hostess.
Network right there.
It's like it just roll off right there. Oh my God. Apparently not. We are fully sponsored by amazing sponsors. Folgers Coffee. Thank you. That's right. Woo! I just love that stuff. And of course, Dr. Snick, Justin Snicker, who is our award-winning composer responsible for our intro and outro. And tonight, oh my gosh, we're just talking about all kinds of things. And man, I don't even know. I mean, there's still so much in this book, and we've got like a half hour left. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I do want to try to get more. As we're talking about, we've talked about the different looking glass technology. We've talked about time travel a little bit. What about Men in Black? This is something that is this, what are they? I mean, we're talking Black Ops, we're talking Men in Black, we're talking about, I guess, I kind of look at them as just strong men for military, government, maybe shadow government. Don't let anybody talk about anything. Just threaten them.
Right.
This has been going on since like Roswell.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And that's a chapter in the Cosmos section of Future Esoteric, Men in Black.
Right.
And and I propose all the different scenarios of who they might be. But you have to understand, they used to show up when people would have a contact experience. Before we had these things to call our friends or take a picture or a video, we'd go to a payphone, right? I saw a UFO. I just came face to face with an alien. They'd be running to go to a payphone or to tell their friends. And before they could even open their mouth, they were confronted with these Men in Black who would telepathically threaten them. So is this a government agency that does it? Why do they always wear the dark glasses to disguise their eyes? Well, they're probably hybrids. They're probably ET human hybrids who have telepathic abilities and whose eyes are the dead giveaway.
Right.
And they're often bald too. They have no hair. That's why they wear the fedoras. And they have been captured on closed circuit TV. And I reproduced some of the photos, some of the best photos of the Men in Black in the chapter. And so why were they so concerned about people having these contacts or UFO? Yeah. So they were obviously helping to cover it up. And in the early years, there was probably an agenda that had to be met, right? That they were coming out and doing this work to silence people telepathically. Now, they would never threaten anyone overtly.
No.
That's what's also really interesting.
But
the people who they came in contact with, not only have they just had this momentous, life-changing sighting or experience, and then they're confronted with the Men in Black saying, you better shut the F up, or terrible things are going to happen to you. And once in a while, some of those contactees would talk and things would happen to them. So there was enough to know that, security cameras in Niagara Falls, Canada. There are famous ones too. Yeah, real famous ones. Video footage as well. And where you can make out their faces, and they do look scary. They do look like they mean business. And the other thing is they would drive these very old cars too, like these 1950 black Cadillacs. And Carrie Cassidy's a friend of mine. I've done several shows with her on Camelot. And we were talking about the Men in Black one time, and she was saying that up in Northern California where I live, there is a very infamous base. I'll tell you a quick story on this. This is a good one.
Yeah.
So in Future Esoteric, I have a chapter on underground bases.
Yeah.
One of which
right.
is this underground base in wine country up in Northern California. Some of the most desired vineyard land, farmland in the world.
Yes.
And so there's this base there. It was even in the Napa Sentinel, I think is the name of the newspaper, and I reprint the quote in the book of a giant subterranean, these nuclear powered machines, and I show a picture of it in the underground bases chapter. It's like 10, 20 stories tall. They're massive, and they're nuclear powered, so they do not need to be refueled. They're just like a mole that can go 8 kilometers a day and create these massive holes as big as the machine is.
Wow.
And since they're nuclear powered, they literally vitrify the rock. And what that means is they melt it. They melt the rock to create this perfect sheen and support for the tunnels. And there are no tailing mounds. There's nothing that comes out. If you go to all the old mine sites in Northern California, the gold and silver mine, you'll see all these tailing mounds, these terrible toxic mounds that won't even support tree or plant life anymore because it's just toxic because they've extracted the metals out of there and got it out. So anyways, we're talking about the Men in Black with Carrie, and she said, well, there's this site where these cars will just drive right into the mountain and disappear. And I said, isn't that interesting, Carrie? Because that's where this really infamous human trafficking underground base, which I've been following Gene Decode very closely. I'm waiting for this one to get taken out. Not only does it have those geothermal features, which can provide energy and heat and hot water. There's a place called the Geysers in Northern California in Calistoga, an Old Faithful. We have our own Old Faithful that erupts there. And it's at this point where there's the base. So what I did was I followed the Oakville grade where the Napa Sentinel said the subterranean went up and entered into the mountain to start creating this underground base where these Men in Black cars are seen just disappearing into the side of the mountain. So get this, I get up there with my cell phone and I want to start doing some recording. Wouldn't work. Camera would not work. It's the first time that's ever happened.
Is there some kind of electromagnetic field there?
That's what I told Carrie, and she says, "Oh yeah, they have that technology. It's a jamming device. They don't because I found the entrance where the subterranean went, and it's right at the top of the Oakville grade. You'll see the scar on the side of the mountain is still there. They put in a firehouse building that's not being used is kind of disguised.
But it looks
and
good.
for 100 yards, my phone would not work, and I have a witness." There that we were trying to take some pictures and videos. You couldn't do it.
Wow.
And so that's this base where they're doing human trafficking. And a lot of people have gone missing in wine country, particularly white tourists from Europe. And so they pull into one of the vineyards and the person would say, "Oh, where are you guys from? Oh, you're from Germany. Wow, that's great. Did you come here alone? Oh, that's great. You know, the next vineyard up, I'm going to give you some free passes and you can go down and see the wine cellars there." And they would take the tour and never come out. They would get snatched. They would disappear the rental car, and then it would just be a missing persons. We don't know where they went. They just disappeared. So get this. Not only would they get the Europeans or whoever else that they could feel that they could snatch, but it's also a human trafficking hub with Bohemian Grove, which is also up there, which also has a hearty appetite for these kind of adolescents to also go missing. I don't know how much. Yeah, there we go. Good old Napa, Ukiah. That's part of it. You got to understand these underground bases can be massive, and they can go for dozens or even up to 100 miles in extent. And so the interesting thing about the subterranean that went in at the Oakville grade, Michelle, it's never come out. It's still creating, going on and creating passages. So we have one of the most notorious underground bases in Northern California. The other one is in Dulce, New Mexico, which goes down many layers. And in Beyond Esoteric, I talk about the unusual story of Phil Schneider, who was in the Dulce Wars there and got his hand burned off, and these deep scars that he used to show at some of his presentations. You can still watch the old videos and see it. That when you hear about an earthquake 10 kilometers down, because that's what they're all coming in at Dulce, New Mexico, or the Geysers, California, do a little fish shake, because that means the Alliance has taken out these bases. And those are two that have not gone down yet. And they are two of the worst known underground bases here in North America. Wow.
Wow. So it's hard to even fathom really that it's all going on, but there's this going on everywhere. Hybrids. I imagine some of these places also house and hide hybrids. What are your thoughts on hybrids?
And create hybrids. Dulce, New Mexico, it's called the Nightmare Hall, where abducted humans are just screaming. It's the worst nightmare that you could ever imagine. I illustrate it. I write about it just because I think people have a right to know, and they need to know about this. You know that there are 40,000 Americans that go missing in this country every single year. Just poof, gone. No idea where they are. We see a little glimpse of them on the back of milk cartons now and again, but nowhere near the total of 40,000 missing every year. And that's FBI statistics. Where do they go? Well, some of them into these underground bases, never to be seen from again, like the Nightmare Hall. Others off planet. And I have the great opportunity and honor of being a moderator of super soldiers at some of these conferences that I speak at. And one common theme is the human trafficking that's going on. And none of these guys are happy about talking about it, and they were powerless to do anything, because sometimes these people are like, please help me, and they can't do anything. They're already off planet, and a lot of them are just to be disposed of, used as body parts, or prostitution. And my friend Tony Rodriguez was in the programs. He lived on the Colony series. His new book has just come out describing it all. It's called Series Colony, another C letter word. You can find it, Tony Rodriguez. And he lived with some of the prostitutes from Earth that were they were just waiting to die. They had nothing to live for. Many of them will get their memories swiped, but very, very few will ever make it back. Right. It's just very unfortunate. But again, people need to know this.
It's
people
have to understand
this. And if somebody has gone missing, it's very unfortunate. Another chapter in Future Esoteric is about cattle mutilation and human abductions, and I bring light to many of these very sordid facts of cattle, 1,800-pound males crashing through the roof. There was just a video that was released a month or two ago of this massive cow coming through, captured on camera, just falling through the ceiling, bam! And all the cows kind of look up, they just go back to eating. But the way that they are operated on and dissected using laser precision instruments to core out their rectums, to take the soft tissues of their eyes, or their lips might be missing, or pieces of their neck, and all the red blood cells being extracted from those animals. And then they don't want the meat. They don't want anything else. They just throw them back in the farmer's field. Did you know, Michelle, that in case of an extreme emergency, say if it was life or death, if you're bleeding out and you have no other recourse, you could use cow blood and live. It wouldn't be good for you. You'd need a blood transfusion, but you'd live long enough to get that. So we have a lot of similarities with mammals. And I would say that part of the cattle mutilation phenomenon is because some of these body parts, the red blood cells in particular, are also a food source to who? The gray aliens. They use a mixture of this that they rub on their skin. That's how they eat. So again, we need to be aware of predatory species.
Are they not AI?
On us.
They actually, are they not artificial intelligence? Like these are actual, eat the Greys, because they're different races,
that's
right?
The way they eat. My understanding, it's a slurry of
right.
Yeah,
I get it.
Blood and other nutrients from living mammals that they consume. They need.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just trying to keep up because I know there's different races of them. And when you're mentioning that they were basically created in a laboratory, I'm thinking, because I know there's also stories of Greys being artificial intelligence or, holograms or so these, I guess, are the Greys that work with probably the reptilians. Would that be right? And saying that, like the same idea.
It's again all under the Archonic network.
Got it.
Reptilians being on top, several species of Greys as their underlings that take their orders. That's the hive mind of these workers that do the dirty work. We also have to include the MILABs, the military laboratories, which are also doing human abductions, which are also doing animal mutilations and giving what these entities need over to them. Now, the reason we don't see a lot of cattle mutilations anymore, it was creating too many alarms. And I'm calling.
Can't hide a cow.
I know Linda Moulton Howe's done a lot of research in that field, and Christopher O'Brien, who did the book on the Mystery Valley. I know these guys. I've talked to them many times, and they're in the agreement that the reason why we don't see a lot of these cattle being just dropped anymore into fields still happens. Like I said, the cow coming through the ceiling is because now they have certain drop areas in our national parks. So I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the big national parks have certain areas where no people can go, no one at all. A big one here in Arizona, up in Grand Canyon. It has all the names of Egyptian gods, the Isis needle and the Osiris plateau, and so many different. That's just one of many of these big national parks that have no-go zones. And according to some of these super soldiers, now they're just dropping carcasses on X marks the spot, and then it's just carrying to the other animals, and bears and other will go there, including humans.
Recycling.
Drop there too.
Recycling. Yeah. Good one, Penny. Look out for the cow dropping as opposed to the cow crossing. Yeah. That's it's I don't think I know you hear about this a lot in the States, and even Skinwalker Ranch was having issues with that. I don't think we have much of that up in Canada, to be honest. Like if we do.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Do we really? So our government's just extra.
Have you ever heard of Nelson, BC, Canada? That was the big, a lot of, some of the super soldiers, including Casbald and who's the guy that died in Sweden? Very mysterious circumstances, had black goo coming out of his mouth just before he was going to give a presentation. They said that they were. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know the guy. Max
Sparks. Max Spears. That's it.
That's right.
Max Spears.
Yes. I heard he was actually sacrificed.
Could be. Something really weird happened. The guy was in perfect health, and he died under very mysterious circumstances right before, just like Phil Schneider, who said, I'm going to come out with some big bombshells, and then they get offed. They were going to present at conferences, and the whole things get filmed and get out there, and they were silenced. Yeah. But Max Spears and James Casbalt and others who were also test tube human super soldier babies. They even admit it. You can see them say it in their own words on some of their videos that they were out of the underground base at Nelson, BC, Canada. And isn't it interesting that the Queen of England herself went there to some of the Native American reservations, you call them First Nation peoples.
That's right. Yeah.
And they would select children and take them out, and those kids would never be seen from again. And now what are they finding? Mass graves of some of these children
everywhere.
in Canada.
Yeah.
Don't think you're immune. I don't think any country is immune.
No.
They're doing what they need to do because they control the narrative, right? So when we have these kind of conversations and we bring light to it, that doesn't work for them. They don't like this.
No.
John Polk's laughing in the background.
I know.
You can't control it.
We've only got a few million people listening tonight. No biggie. You know, I don't know how the archive will do, but you can't stop live radio. But yeah. So sounds like an uphill battle more than anything. But you talk about
battle, but the more of us that know what's going on, the more we're gonna get closer to victory. Let's just say,
right.
Because the war is about consciousness. It's controlling the narrative. It's taking it back and saying, hey, this is our reality. This has been robbed from us and we want it back. And we are not going to let these globalists and their ET handlers. Look, the real generals are the reptilians. And this was just reconfirmed to me at the conference. Yeah.
Well, who supersede them? Like who?
Well, underneath them are like Rothschilds and Rockefellers.
What about over them? Like there's some elite families here that a lot of people don't even know about, that don't come out into the public. Like, are they?
There are insectoids. They're part of it too. They're kind of a hive mind. I would also put them in the Archon network. But really, who's running the show is reptilian ETs. Now,
David
Alex Collier, who came out last year at the Mount Shasta Summer Conference, and he's coming back. He said publicly, he's like, I haven't done a public presentation in 20 years, and right after this, I'm going into retirement again. But Rob Potter, the host of the show, he's going to bring him out of retirement again, and I got a great opportunity to sit down and talk to him, and John Polk's going to be doing Skywatch tours at Mount Shasta. So come on out. There may be some tickets available. And
I love it.
Come and meet us and get to hear Alex Collier talk. So he is an Andromedan contactee from the time he was a little kid. One of the few people I know that have recollection of being aboard a craft and can describe it and tell you how they do it. Fly these things mentally, by the way.
Right.
That's why there's no screens. There's no hand gears. What they do is they sit in one of the chairs, like the Montauk chair, and sometimes even wear a headband, and their suit also is part of the ship.
Right.
But he has said that
I need to connect you with some people, Brad. I do need to connect you with some people. I think that might just blow your mind.
Right on.
I will, because just with things that you're saying now, it's, you know how sometimes it's like synchronicities, right? Things just, we're just supposed to come across people to shall I say, be part of this big network of the collective and putting it out there and helping with awareness. And I'm going to connect you with a couple of interesting people. So, and then you're going to go, what?
Sounds great. Well, what I wanted to say before we run out of time here is Alex Collier was saying that ever since 9/11, the big false flag attack, the Andromedans saw in their future that humans were going to be a terror in the universe. We were going to be like Avatar movie and just be exploiting other planets and be a real menace. So they knew that the tyranny, the neo-fascism, started on 9/11 and that all this builds from there. So they had to take a vote in the Galactic Federation Council. And Alex Collier, hopefully he's going to talk about this more. I can't see him not up in Mount Shasta, because they made a deal that we have to clean up Earth. It's going to be too big of a problem. It's going to affect all of us. And look, they're going to get this high technology. They're already blowing up atomic bombs, which, by the way, have repercussions in the multidimensional universe. And it's more than just creating a big radioactive bomb crater where we blow them off, but it has repercussions through the dimensions. Yes. And he said, can you imagine how bad the humans are going to be if they're not put in check? Because we get hijacked. This is the whole timeline too. This is what they're trying to do, is get us into this timeline where Earth is just the worst fascist planet you can ever imagine. And we're all chattel to them doing their bidding, right? So that's why now every person has a role, if only to wake up and understand, and your consciousness says, I'm not going along with it.
Right.
That's all you have to do, really. That's the revolution, being consciousness.
Right.
But so Alex Collier said that they had to do something about the Earth problem. And so what they did was they started to extract all the reptilians from all the underground bases. Whenever they came and went, they'd catch them. If they could catch them, they did. And that's why Earth has been under a quarantine now for quite a while, for several decades, since 9/11 at least. And what they're doing is they're not judging the reptilians. They're not executing them. They're just putting them on a faraway planet and saying, you're out of here. You're off planet.
You can't play
what
nice
they're
in
going
the
to do
playground,
next.
you're going home.
And guess what? This is the fate of the Rothschilds. They cannot be allowed to remain on this planet. If they're fortunate enough not to be executed, ALA, the French Revolution with pitchforks and hanging them off the lampposts, they will be put off planet as well, because they cannot be allowed to manipulate Earth anymore. And that is part of how we win our planet back.
Right.
And so the great show in the universe right now is here on planet Earth. You can't imagine how much attention from other benevolent extraterrestrial as well as malevolent ETs want to see what humans are going to do once we have full control of the narrative and of our planet and all this technology. Are we going to destroy ourselves, or are we going to enter this utopian golden age?
I guess my question is, are they going to assist?
Well, they will, but they want to see that we have it in us to, one, how about alleviate starvation? What are we going to do when we can control it? Are we going to lift up everybody? You know, all boats rise on a high tide. It's got to be that way. So we have to be able to not only help all the other humans on this planet, but we have to stop the environmental degradation of this Mother Earth, this garden planet, which is just a beautiful gem that we have destroyed. So, for example, Fukushima, it's still leaking radiation. I live out here on the West Coast. I won't eat fish anymore out of the Pacific. They're still pulling out tuna. Tuna are apex predators of the ocean. They just circle around and around the North Pacific Basin. I was one time fortunate enough to be scuba diving in Fiji, and we did an outer reef dive. The only sound you can hear when you're scuba diving is when you take a metal knife, for example, and hit your tank, and it's ding, 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 ding. So I looked over, and my dive master, he's like pointing up, because we're well down, 100 feet down, and we see 3 or 4 bluefin tuna go swimming by, and they're massive and just prehistoric looking animals, and just booking, moving through there so fast. So we get back up on the boat, and I said, wow, that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And he goes, you only saw 4 or 5 of them. 20 years ago, you would have seen 70. 100 years ago, you would have seen 700. That's how decimated our oceans now, denuded of all the fish that Asia and a hungry world wants to eat. So we have to restore this garden planet and break out of this prison planet and make it a garden planet again into a utopian age. And so that's the small part I hope to offer through my books, through these interviews, is just to get people thinking that there's got to be a better way, because this ain't it.
Awaken a little bit.
We're not being given a very good option here. Oh, you'll own nothing and like it.
No, it's not an option for me. I own lots of crap.
Globalists and the horse they rode in
I like
on.
it. I know. It's it's funny you mention the oceans, because last week we had Captain Paul Watson.
Oh, great! I love him.
Oh, he's an awesome guy. Yeah, and he said one thing, and it's all he ever has to say: if the oceans die, we die.
Yep.
And I think people need to realize that our planet belongs Well, I say it belongs to us. I think it's on loan to us for our children and our children's children and for future generations coming in. And the old term that you have to, when you go somewhere, leave it a better place than how you found it, preferably because you were part of that. I think that applies here because we're really leaving one hell of a mess for future generations if we can't get this straightened out.
Yep.
Right? So, well, thank you so much. I wish you all the best on your UFO talk, and I wish I was there because it sounds like you guys are going to be having a whole boatload of fun. And find one of those UFOs for me. Take me a picture. Take me a picture. But you will be coming back for book 3. How does everybody find you right now? Website?
Yeah, well, you can go to bradolsen.com, and one of the pages is all the conference I'll be speaking at. Come on out and meet me. I love to meet our audience and sign books for people. If you want to check out my books, go to cccpublishing.com. And I'm also a book publisher, and I have other authors that I publish, including Leo Lion-Zagami, Michael Jaco, and Milo Duquette, some of the biggest names in occult research. I publish and I edit their books. So I'm very familiar with these subjects. I know them. I love them. I have to get deep into them. But sometimes it's a little troubling to think them through too much. So that's why I put it out in the world, and we'll let people decide. And let's take back that narrative. And the revolution is consciousness, Michelle. And that's the subtitle on the back of Modern Esoteric Beyond Our Senses. And I know we're going backwards.
That's okay.
Modern Esoteric will be the next interview, and that's a great one too. 5 stars on Amazon, and it's very well received as well.
Well, that's the next one. So you guys better catch up and go ahead and get Future Esoteric, the Unseen Realms. Damn, Sam got it.
That Arconic Network. We're going to see them now.
Exactly. There we go. There we go. Well, thank you.
Got a live audience back here too.
We do. I like it. It's like a cheering section. That's amazing. So I will shoot you an email with a little bit of information, and thank you. So have yourself a fantastic weekend.
Oh, you too, Michelle. And I look forward to the next time we have a chance to talk.
All right, darling. Have a good one. Bye-bye now. Wow, that was like amazing as always. I get a little bit tongue-tied. It's just so much information, really hard to process. But we are at the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. Big thank you to Brad Olsen. Huge thank you to Folgers Coffee and Dr. Snick. Please remember to head over and show us some love on YouTube at International Public Radio, UFO Paranormal Radio, and UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. If you want to drop us a line, please do so at the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. That's the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. Head over to Facebook, give us a like. We appreciate it. Next week, we have 2 returning guests. Wednesday, we welcome the return of Wes Roberts. On the last segment, you will have remembered him from talking about his abduction experiences. This time he returns to something a little bit different. He's going to be talking about magic. I know, right? Sounds great. Thursday evening we love this guy. He is just awesome. David Weiss is coming back to the show, and he's going to be picking up where he left off with his discussion on the flat earth theory. Yeah, you heard it right. The flat earth theory. And I'll tell you, his archives are still out of control. People love him. He's full of energy. He's just charismatic. We really love him. Check out the Facebook pages too for the Gray Zone Uncensored Summer Hours. Yep, that's right. Summer Hours every 2 weeks as opposed to every week. We have to have a life too, people. It takes a lot of research, about 20 to 25 hours a week to research for Gray Zone. I'm just like work to the bone. Anyway, it's a long weekend for those of us in Canada, the Victoria Day weekend. So for those listening here in Canada, please just play safe. I know the fireworks have already started out this way. So just, make it back to us next week. Okay. So thank you and good night.